Hello there my friends, you're listening to Ebird Online and I'm back with another review. And I'm going to apologise in advance of my voice, I still have a sore throat. This virus got a hold of me. But guys, we've got things to do. We need to break down Ed's conduct and Ed's behaviour on the 90 Day Fiance Single Life Tell-All, Part 1. I've got to tell you, I was stopped in my tracks with all the revelations that came from this tell-all. And Colt, yes that's right, Colt had to get Ed together for his bad behaviour. And a few days ago I took to Twitter, such was my level of shock. When Colt feels the need to tell you you're no good, you know you ain't ish. Guys, just before I begin, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my reviews. And tomorrow I'll catch back up with Happily Ever After. And also please don't forget to hit the like button, it does make a difference to my YouTube standing. And also don't forget to share the video with anyone else that you may think would be interested. So without further ado, I give you Big Ed telling lies at the tell-all. Now I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think that Big Ed is the most self-absorbed, self-obsessed, conceited egomaniac on the whole of this franchise. I don't think there's any worse. And yes, Jesse Meester, that includes you. It's saying something when you're more egotistical than someone that gives geriatrics the benefit of his life experience. And as I've said before, Big Ed is still in the mode of centration. He still doesn't understand how others view things and how others see the world. He views everything from his own viewpoint and his own viewpoint alone. All of Big Ed's problems stem from his excessive egocentricity, and I'm going to prove it to you. So here are the best examples of Ed and his egocentric behaviour on this tell-all. So the first outing of Ed the egomaniac is when he's talking to production at the start of the tell-all. And they ask him what's happened with him and Liz, and he says, well, we're in a really rocky place right now. We haven't spoken to each other for a little while, and I really don't know what's happening. I'm wondering if she's moved on, if she's with another guy. And guys, the whole time he's doing this, he's kind of semi-tearing up and shaking his head as if he's so sad because of what's happened. And then he said, I treated Liz very well, and I did the best I could, but she was taught to fight. She wasn't taught to love and to be affectionate. So Ed's egomania number 1, it's all Liz's fault. Where does he get off saying that she was taught to fight and not to love? Ed, you know good and well, you accuse her of shit morning, noon and night. Any friends she has, you accuse them of sleeping with her. You accuse her of working too much and spending too much time with her daughter and not enough with you. So Ed's painting this narrative that it's in some way Liz's fault. As you'll see later, it's very, very far from the truth, but no surprises there. On to number 2. So the first thing we see is everybody meeting in the green room, and there's Molly, there's Danielle, there's Colt and Vanessa, and Big Ed's in there, and in sachets Fernanda. So Ed's egomania number 2, he tries to crack on to Fernanda. Oh lord. And as soon as Fernanda walked in, Ed walked over, walked straight up to her, shook her hand, said he had a little bit of a crush on her, and said, oh my god, you're absolutely beautiful, and you're so tall. And then he said to producers, I would love something to happen with me and Fernanda. She's absolutely beautiful. And guys, like I've said so many times before, Ed doesn't see himself for who he actually is. He genuinely thinks that it's not weird to say to somebody 30 to 35 years your junior, oh, you're really good looking. Oh, and you're tall. I'd love something to happen. Ed, that's weird. Ed, that's creepy. And honestly, Ed is the kind of batshit crazy that nobody ever warned you about because nobody ever knew that this level existed. And then to make things worse, Ed just sits opposite Fernanda, just basically leching. Guys, he's so uncomfortable. His behaviour makes the skin crawl right off my flesh. And then the group ask Ed where Liz is, and he has to confess that they've split up. And when they ask him for more details, he just starts crying. And guys, I know you might think I'm harsh, but this whole thing is so performative. And when I get to tell you the reason that they split up later in this episode, you will realise just how performative this whole thing is. Ed's a fake and a fraud and a phony. And so the show begins, and they introduce everybody. And Sean says we're going to begin with Ed and Liz. And she asks Liz first, why did you break up? And basically Liz said that Ed moved everything along at a rate of knots and it was far too fast. As soon as she agreed to go on a date, he wanted to take her to a wedding. As soon as she agreed to go to the wedding and said she'd be his girlfriend, he introduced her to his daughter and then his grandparents, his brothers and sisters. And she said everything was so forced and so rushed, and she didn't have a moment to breathe. And as far as I'm concerned, there's one reason and one reason alone that Ed wants to do all of this. He wants to show her off as if she's a car or a handbag or some sort of inanimate object. He wants to say to everybody, look what I got. Why did he need to say at the wedding, this is my girlfriend? Remember, he said, we look like a couple. People are going to ask. So you just say, we're dating. But that wouldn't have been good enough for Ed, because it wouldn't have proved at that point they are seeing each other. They are sleeping together. She is with him. That is what he wanted to prove. And that was the reason, I believe, that he rocket launched this relationship into orbit at a rate of knots. So the next demonstration of Ed the Ego, number 4, is when Liz tells us that Ed threatened her all the time and said, if you don't go at my pace, if you don't see my sister, if you don't meet my daughter, we're finished. So as soon as he managed to break her down and sleep with her, he managed to hold the relationship over her head the whole time, and she always felt as if she'd lose him. And another demonstration of Ed hanging things over Liz's head is when they finally did move in together. Every single time they had an argument, Ed would say, right, pack your things and leave. Oh my God, what kind of rat tells someone who's living with you, who has a kid, to just leave each time you argue? It's so juvenile. It's what kids in their 20s do. And then Ed had the temerity to say, I can't believe that you left and didn't come back. Ed, if you always tell someone, leave, just leave then, go on, get out then. At some point, do you know what? They will take you at your word and they will go. But Ed's ego, number 5, this is the one that has me. Just a short 2 days after Liz had left Ed's house, Ed blocked her on his phone, went on a trip to Vegas with 2 sugar babies, and had full-on frolics, and he was putting photos on Instagram of him with the 2 sugar babies in a hotel room. Guys, here's the picture. There was a whole period of time when I had no words for this. You're 55. You have a daughter who's 32. And you're with 2 21-year-olds in a hotel room. And Liz is back at home, more than likely having to put a brave face on it to continue going into work and to continue being a good mum for her kid. And Ed used to tell her, you'll never find someone like me again. Yes, Ed, we know. That's the bloody point. We all want to get there. We all want to get to the point where we'll never meet someone like Ed again. Guys, most people live and learn, but Ed just lives. And guys, so then Colt piped up and Colt said, I know I'm a piece of shit, but Ed, you take the biscuit. You're far worse. How dare you fall out with somebody and then 2 days later go with 2 sugar babies to Las Vegas? And guys, the whole cast came down on Ed. Everybody had their 2 penneth and everybody was saying what a despicable human being he is. So of course, Ed pulled out the tears. That didn't work very well. And then of course, Ed pulls out the lies. And he tries the ye old, you didn't see everything, there's lots of stuff that you guys don't know about. Ed, if there was anything like a smoking gun or anything that would help you in your quest to make people think that you're actually even a human being, you would have pulled it out the bag by now. If there was anything that could possibly save you, you would have saved yourself. I think I'm thoroughly entitled to believe that what we're listening to here from Liz is true, otherwise you would refute it fact by fact. So then everybody else still said, Ed, you're so selfish. And then Liz said, listen to this. I didn't know how to even dumb down the conversation enough so that Ed would understand what I was saying. And then she went on to explain that when she and her daughter came home from work or from school, they wanted it to feel like it was their home and not her boyfriend's house. So she wanted to make it a little bit more homely, putting some photos up and just a few nice touches. And she said Ed insisted on choosing all the photos, putting all the photos up and all the pictures up, and where they put the photos, he wanted everything his own way. And she was halfway through saying this and she wanted to go and say something else, but Ed cut her off and said, that really hurt my feelings, and do you want to know why? No, Ed, nobody cares. Nobody wants to know why. If your feelings are hurt, it's because of shit that you've done. We're not interested any longer. But anyway, he fought his way through the conversation, as he so often does, screaming and shouting people down, like egomaniacs always do. And he said, I'm a photographer by trade, and because I'm a photographer, I wanted to do the choosing, and I wanted to say where things went. Ed, these are little family snapshots that you've got. They're not high fashion editorials. And you say you're a photographer by trade. I've seen your photography, and I'm underimpressed, let's say. Not just unimpressed, I'm underimpressed. And between you and me, I low-key think that Ed's photography career was yet just another scam so he could get around good-looking women. That's just my theory, guys. And once Ed had stopped rabbiting on, Liz said, "Ed, all I wanted was a piece of me in that apartment." And Ed said, "It was you. It was a picture of you and your daughter." And she said, "But you picked it out, Ed. When I walk in your bathroom, I see a giant picture of your face." And everybody burst into laughter, and I did peep this last week. It was quite funny. Ed the narcissist has a picture of himself on his shower curtain. And that's in addition to his tattoo on his leg of himself and the numerous stickers on his suitcase and all over his home of himself. Honestly, I wish I was making it up, but yeah, he really is that weird. But what was bizarre is the whole of the rest of the cast, including Colt, everybody understood what she was saying, but Ed was still arguing and saying, "But it's my house and I wanted to put the photos where I wanted and I'm a photographer by trade." He doesn't understand. Just let the girl put a photo of her and her daughter up wherever it is that she wants. Just give her that. She hasn't picked out the sofas or the carpets or the tiles or the shower curtain. Ed, the girl wants a bloody photo. Let her have a photo. Sometimes when Ed's on screen, I lean back on my sofa, I close my eyes, and I pray to the Lord for him to give me strength so I can continue talking about Ed without spontaneously freaking combusting. That's how Ed makes me feel. And at the end of this segment, Molly said it best. "Not only are you an asshole, but you're a self-absorbed asshole." And I love to hear it. Molly got him together real good. And I low-key think Molly's the reason that he doesn't want an older woman. He'd have to be told about himself. And he knows there are many, many tales to tell. And then Big Ed said, "Am I self-absorbed? Maybe I am. Sometimes, Ed, yes, is a complete sentence. Consider that." And then Colt lectured him a bit more and said, "I used to have girlfriends and go out and sleep with the girls and expect my girlfriends to be back waiting for me at home. But I've realised that is wrong. You're still doing it, Ed." And just when it looked like Ed had no more jokers to pull out of his back pocket, he came up with the ye old, "I'm now in therapy." Oh, Ed's in therapy, everyone. So bloody what? Nobody feels sorry for you, Ed. Nobody. And he said, "My therapist and I are trying to work out why I want so much attention." And so next time we see Ed, he's back on screen with his mum. And Sean asks why the pair argued so much. And she said, Ed has a genuine concern that she's going to find somebody else because she's so young. She still wants to go out and she's in a different phase of life to Ed. Ed needs to find someone that's like 10 or 15 years younger than him. Right, okay, so let's get this straight. To me, this is Ed strikes again. Ed has a genuine concern. There is no genuine concern. A genuine concern is there's a question mark over the girl's head. A genuine concern is somebody's told you she's seeing someone else. A genuine concern is I ring her phone and she calls me back 2 days later. A genuine concern is she says she's at work today. I've just walked into her workplace. She isn't working. That is a genuine concern that she's cheating. Ed just thinks that people are cheating regardless of whether they are or not. Ed's criteria for someone cheating is the fact that they are his girlfriend. You're going out with Ed, ergo, you're a cheat. Oh mum, there is no genuine concern. Why do you think it's a genuine concern? Because Ed has led you to believe that it is. And I haven't forgotten the time when Ed returned home from the Philippines and his mum said, "Why have you broken up?" And Ed said, "Oh, Rose has decided she wants 2 more kids and, I'm too old." And she said, "Well, that's kind of silly. She knew that you were older." And Ed said, "Yep, you know what? I know, but what can you do? She left me all on my own in the hotel room." And his mum was like, "Oh, my poor little Ed, these awful women." But Ed forgot to say that he knew she wanted kids all along. He strung Rose along until he got what he wanted. And then on their final day there, he dropped the bomb of, "I will not be having kids. It's 100%. It's non-negotiable." And only at that point did Rose say, "You knew I wanted kids, I'm now leaving." But Ed the ego misrepresented the whole of that scenario to his mum, and I believe that he's done exactly the same again here today. And Liz helpfully explained that Ed had tried to condition her, and that he gave a constant ultimatum, saying that this relationship won't work out if you don't do this for me, or if you don't do that for me. She said, "I was reticent to start a relationship in the first instance, but once I fell really hard, and Ed was always dangling that above my head." But next up comes Tiffany. And Sean tells us Liz was scared of meeting Tiffany, and Tiffany didn't disappoint. To say the very least. Tiffany is a goddamn tyrant. And Tiffany attempts to wriggle out of her being a massive biatch by saying, I had resting bitch face, that wasn't my intention at all. Yes it was, Tiffany. That's what you do every single time I've ever seen you on screen. You're that same biatch. That is you. That is what you do. That is who you are. And she said, I didn't want my dad to get his heart broken again. She's very similar to Rose. They're both younger and they both have kids. 10 or 15% of the population. I really wouldn't say they're similar at all. But when she was saying this, it did make me think of one thing. Does Ed absolutely target young single mums? Maybe he tries to target single mothers because he thinks they'll be financially compromised and needing to create that family dynamic that Ed will dangle over their head and offer. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the reason. Just a thought. And guys, about this, I'd be interested to know what you think. He met Rose online, so he knew immediately that Rose had a kid. That's for sure. And then thinking about it, he knew Liz before. So it would have probably come out when they were friends, for the few months they were friends before they started dating, that she had a child. So he's actually beginning relationships with people that he knows have young children. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. Then Ed admitted that the story he told all of his viewers and his mum and all of his friends and family about Liz just deciding to go home after a big argument from Las Vegas was actually a lie. It was he who pretended to book tickets home just to try and shake Liz up, and when Liz took it seriously and she booked tickets home, Ed yet again acts like the victim. And Tiffany said she was happy when they broke up because they were always breaking up and getting back together. And Ed said that they broke up 7 times during the relationship. 7 times! That's twice a week. I honestly believe they're only going out for about 3.5 weeks. Absolutely unbelievable. Absolutely laughable. 7 times! Oh Lord. Then Ed tried to say he behaved like such an asshole to Liz because he thought she's so beautiful. Why would she want to go out with me? I just don't understand it. And everybody said, huh? Scooby-Doo style, because nobody understood what he was talking about. And then he did the ye old, my therapist said, and I can't be bothered to give you any more because I'm not interested in what his therapist says. Nobody is sufficiently qualified to sort out that tumultuous mind. But the final word in this part of the tell-all comes from guess who? Debbie. And once again, Ed's massive ego was demonstrated when he went on a rant about Debbie's son, Colt. So Ed was basically running off his mouth and saying, Colt's attached to the nipple. Debbie, you need to get your own life and stop living with Colt. And totally aside from this being completely ridiculous because you, Ed, live with your mum, it's nothing to do with you, Ed. The whole thing was laughable because Ed was doing his usual deflection. But guys, what this demonstrated to me is that Ed is so devoid of the ability to see the truth. So he was saying, Colt's still on the nipple. Debbie, you baby Colt. You get involved in all his relationships. He needs to stand on his own 2 feet. And Debbie said, oh, F off, Ed. F off. Your mum puts mayonnaise on your hair. She paints your back. She shaves your back. She's watching you whilst you're in the shower. You're the one who's babied Ed. And in fact, all of that is true. Yes, he is. By both friends, siblings and family. But while Debbie was saying all of this, the whole of the cast were laughing, including Sean. And then Debbie finished off with a plum. She said, you have no right to give advice. You're about the lowest life form. Go on, Debbie. It was quite amusing, guys. And that's where we leave things for this week. So what do you guys think? Do you guys agree that Ed has a ginormous ego? And what do you think is going to happen in the future? Do you think there's any chance that he and Liz will get back together? She was saying, I still love him. I honestly don't know how or why, but maybe she does, who knows? And have you revised what you've thought about Liz? I'm kind of very unsure now. I was very sure before going into this tell-all that Liz was nothing more than a gold digger and she wanted the limelight. Now I'm not quite so sure. What do you guys think? Has it made you think twice? Please let me know in comments down below and I will see you very soon. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and all of that good stuff. It's fun over here. Subscribe to the Ebird. Thank you guys so much for listening and I bid you good day.